All right, so for lab 4, we are going to be doing inserts. And I know we did a bunch of inserts last time, but we're going to kind of take inserts, I guess you could say, to another level as far as we are going to do many. And this is kind of the bulk of it. And I think we talked about this last time where last week was a pre-seed, meaning we were kind of just putting like utility data in. But this week, we're going to actually put like a lot of like data, actual like data in the system. Now, normally you really do this because a lot of times you spin up a database and then you let like people put it in through like web applications and that sort of stuff. But obviously, we need data to just work with, so we're going to put that in ourselves. And before we get too much into that, there's one thing I wanted to show you real quick because it is helpful in the context of how we're going to insert this data. So before we jump into the lab a little bit, I kind of wanted to go over some of this. So in SQL Developer, let me hit cancel on here. I wanted to show you how to generate a diagram that will hopefully help a little bit show the relationship and the hierarchy, because that is going to be important as we do our inserts. And then I also think it'll just help you understand the design aspect, as well as just overall understanding our database. So once you get in, and I'm just waiting for this to do its thing to connect. There it goes. If you come up here to File, and then go to Data Modeler, and then go to Import, and then Data Dictionary. And once you're in here, we're going to connect to our database. So you click on the student and you hit Next. It'll make you type it in again. And then it's going to show our schemas. And the schema is basically databases. So we want to do the student database. So we're going to select that one. And then we're going to hit Next. And then it's going to say select the objects to import. And we are going to go ahead and actually, we want address, we want common lookup. I'm not going to do the lab tables. We're not going to do our little person and stuff like that. So let's do rental item, street address, system user, and telephone. And then let's hit Next. It says that we're going to import some tables, 11 of them, and then we hit Finish. And then it's going to generate our design, and then we get left with this. And we can close this log because it obviously worked. Now, when you first pull this up, it's going to be a little messy, and we can clean a lot of this up. So you'll notice that there's kind of lines going everywhere. I know that system user is kind of our main one. So when we organize this, we're going to put system user over here because it's kind of every table has a tie to system user for our who audit stuff. And then next, I want to do member. Let's put member over here. And then we want to do contact. Actually, yeah, let's put those over here. It will be, like I said, it'll be a little messy at first. Let's put contact over here. Can we grab multiple at the same time? Maybe. Yep. Let's move you guys over here for right now because we just don't need you at the moment. We have telephone and street address. We're going to move both these over here. Then we end up with a member, contact, address, street address, and telephone. So every one of these lines is a table, obviously. You know, I wonder if we can just delete this for right now or hide it. Show hide elements. Can we hide this whole thing? I was hoping there'd be a way we could just hide this. anyways, let's, for the time being, I'm going to delete this. Let me make sure I'm not got something else clicked on here that we want to keep. Delete. And we're going to just delete that one so it's not as messy. There we go. That looks a lot better. All right, now we can hopefully see a little bit better hierarchy here. And there's going to be a little mess because of common lookup. We're going to put common lookup here in the middle. So what we're going to do here is we have our common lookup table in the middle because it's pretty popular used amongst everything. So then let's organize this side of our table. That side's pretty clean. Let's see if we can make this one just a little bit less crisscrossy. There we go. That's getting a little bit better. That one goes in that little pocket there. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so now what we can do is we can use this to kind of see our hierarchy. Now you'll notice that pretty much almost everything has a tie to common lookup, and that's why we did those pre-seed stuff, because you'll remember when we did the pre-seed stuff, we did a lot of insert into common lookup, and that's because we were putting all the data that's going to be used for these other tables inside there, so that way we're kind of ready to go. And then if we look at these other tables, and let's start over on this left-hand side, you'll notice that we have member that's kind of up here, and it only has one dependency besides common lookup, and that is contact. And then if you go to contact, contact has two dependencies. It has telephone, and again, I'm speaking besides common lookup because most have common lookup as a dependency. And they all have system user as a dependency, which is why I deleted that, so that way we don't see all those lines. But then we look, so every contact has an address or multiple addresses. Basically, contact is depending on address, or I should say that the other way. Address is dependent upon contact. You can have a member without a contact, but you can't have a contact without a member. And then so on and so forth. So you'll notice that these little symbols, this carrot foot down here, or this chicken foot, that's what they're called. They're called chicken feet. And that actually means something. And what it means is a many-to-one relationship. And it goes the direction of the arrow. So in this case, you can have many contacts for one member. You can have many telephone numbers for one contact. You can have many addresses for one contact. You can have many street addresses for one address. And that's all kind of part of the design stuff. And so you can, a lot of times people will draw this out. In fact, if you ever go apply for a database job, a lot of times they'll ask you to draw out like an HR database, like, and they'll list certain business requirements. And this is kind of where that all comes down to. And I guess just to hit a little bit on the design portion of it all, what makes this possible is how we define our foreign keys. Because obviously all this exists basically with the code that we did in lab 2 with our underscore lab tables. You could generate this same thing with your underscore lab tables. And it would look identical, just have underscore lab names in certain places. And the way that we build these relationships is with those foreign keys. So every time you see one of these lines, it's actually a foreign key. So like if I hit properties on here, you'll actually notice that this is FK address 1. And then you can see the primary key it points to. So this is the address foreign key, and it points to contact dot the primary key. So it points to the contact table's primary key. And there you can see the reference column right there, which is contact ID, and it is marked as mandatory. So that's how we build these relationships, is by defining our primary key, our primary and foreign key relationships. Um, just like with street address here, because we have a street address ID, or an address ID, and we define that as a foreign key, we tell it what it references, it then builds this arrow, essentially, this relationship that connects the two. And if you think about it, if we have address ID here that is a foreign key that points to this one, for every one value of address ID in the address table, we can have multiple records in street address. So that's where that the many to one relationship comes from, is because we can have multiple records here that all point to address ID. And there's more relationships. There's a one-to-one. I don't believe we have any one-to-ones here. No, we don't. We don't have any one-to-ones here. There's one-to-one. There's many-to-many. Lots of different relationships. The most common one is this many-to-one. And what that does is it builds our hierarchy in the sense that there's an order to the database. Like, so for example, if we didn't have any members in our database, which I don't believe we currently do, let's hurry and see. If I launch SQL Plus here, I do select everything from member, we get no rows selected. So we don't have any members. Is it possible, and this is a question I will pose to the class, is it possible to put a record into contact without having member?
That'd be a constraint error, wouldn't it?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, that would be, because we put that we put this as a mandatory relationship, because we put a not null constraint on the member ID in contact, and then we define it as a foreign key, and so it can't be null. So we have to have a member record before we can build a contact. So yep, absolutely. So a couple questions here. Someone said, can you build an ERD from scratch in this developer tool? Yes, I believe you can. Pretty sure you can. I've actually never done it, but you can. Most of the time, just because I know I'm doing it anyways. I usually I have an iPad Pro. It's the only Apple product I use with a pencil, the Apple Pencil, and it's really nice to quickly draw out, or sometimes I just use paper. It's really nice to just quickly just draw your ideas. But then once I actually go to make a diagram, I found it's almost as easy just to actually build the table, because you have to define everything anyways, if that makes sense. Because if you want all the arrows, you have to specify the foreign keys and all this and that. And so I found that quick sketching is done with a non-specific tool, and then once I get to the point where I actually want to finalize a design, I just build it, because you're gonna do it anyway. So, and then another question is, what does the dotted line indicate? So the dotted line, and let's click on this. Go to properties. So the dotted line is an optional. You'll notice that this is member type. This is one that would not be required. So it does not have a not null constraint, meaning that we could leave member type empty for a member. So the dotted lines are non-required. And I believe we end up turning this back on eventually. And what does the return line from common lookup to contact mean? So yeah, so there's this one. Let's just take a look. That's what's nice about this. So we have contact ID, which is we have, let's see. It actually goes through it. Let's turn this like this. There. That probably makes more sense. That one actually just goes through it over to rental. And MySQL, there's other ERD is what they're called. There's other diagramming tools that actually work a lot better. Like, for example, MySQL Workbench. If you're using MySQL, it actually moves the lines around. And there's other tools. There's a lot of tools. dbeaver is another great one. I use it as my main tool. I believe DataGrip, JetBrains IDE has the same functionality, and it will move the lines around for you so they're not going through and stuff like that. So anyways, but the main purpose of this is to show you this hierarchy because we have to insert in a certain way. And that's kind of the main meat of Lab 4 is we are doing what's called a chained insert. And a chained insert means that we are going to insert in a specific order in chains. So, for example, we talked about how there's a many-to-one relationship between contact and member. So we're a video store database, right? And let's say we offer a family membership, or let's just say all of our memberships allow you to put multiple contacts. You know, I remember back in high school going to Video USA or Blockbuster, whatever, you know, and I'd be driving home from school and, you know, there's a new movie and your mom says, hey, why don't you stop and pick up that movie that we've all wanted to see from the video rental place? You know, and so when you get there, you know, you could put it on your account and do all that stuff. Same thing with like Netflix or Disney Plus. You know, let's pretend that now we're no longer doing like physical copy rentals, but we're actually doing like Amazon Prime movie rentals. You know, we have one membership. You pay your 12 whatever dollars a month, and then you can have multiple profiles or contacts as entries so they can kind of manage their own account. So let's think about it in that sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our member record, and then we're going to insert a contact. So we'll do one member record, and then imagine this like for loop. So we're going to say insert into member, then we're going to do one contact. And let's say this contact, let's pretend it's Harry Potter family. We're going to do Harry Potter is our first contact. So we put in Harry Potter's contact record. We put in his address record. We put in his street address record. We put in his telephone record. And then we kind of have Harry Potter done. But his wife, Ginny, sorry. Lily's the daughter. Ginny, spoiler if you haven't seen Harry Potter, him and Ginny get together. Ginny is under the same membership. So we already have this existing member record. So we want to tie Ginny to this member record. So we insert all of her contact, her address, her street address, her telephone, and then we do the same thing for their child, Lily. So that's what it means by a chained insert, because essentially what we're doing is if you think about it, we have the top link of the chain as member, and then we're actually going to have 2 or 3 strands coming off each one of those off the same member link, essentially. And each one of the links following is a table record. So, you know, we're going to have a strand for Harry. We're going to have a strand for Ginny. We're going to have a strand for Lily, all coming off the same member record. But we have to do that in a specific order. So let's segue into the lab right now. Does that make sense to everybody? I wish I had like a drawing thing here. I think I do actually. I'm going to draw on here and hope that I know how to delete them after. So if this is our member record, let's put a big old M there. And then we're going to have contact for Harry, address for Harry, street address for Harry, and then telephone oddly comes right here. It's actually connected to those other 2. So we're going to say HP, Harry Potter. And then we have Ginny, her contact, her address, her street address, and then her telephone. And, there'd be more. And essentially, we're going to do this a couple of times, because this is one membership. Let's just say that it's just the two of them. That's one. Then we do another member record for another family. And, they'd have all theirs. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yep.
Perfect. Okay. And I learned how to do those, so cool. Anyways, all right, so let's jump into the lab. Let's jump right in. So, just like last week, they actually have this perfect example, and I'm going to try to do a better job of explaining this time. I felt like there was a lot of confusion around week 3 and week 2. So inside of your lib1 folder, there is all of the scripts that are used to create the normal tables. So like our contact address, all that kind of stuff. And so what we do is we are going to essentially replicate what these done. So lab 2 was the create, lab 3 was the pre-seed. Now we're in lab 4, which is the seed file. And just so you know, this is the last lab where we actually have a working example. Labs 5 onward, we're going to be writing from scratch. So this is the last time we have a perfect example to go off of. Now, one thing I do want to explain is that in the lab instructions, it actually has you copy all of the files to your directory, your lab 4 directory from lib1. And this is just to get those, because you can take and copy all those and then just edit them. But what I actually suggest, what I'm going to do here for a few examples, is I'm actually just going to open it up into two file editors. I'm going to take and just kind of use it as an example, similar to if you were going to look at a GitHub, or not a GitHub, a Stack Overflow type of thing. Imagine if you did a Google search for how to do a chained insert and there was a nice, perfect example of what you were going to do. You just had to change the names. That's essentially what this is. You can choose to copy it if you want and then edit the names. I'm going to go step by step simply because I think it makes more sense in the actual learning, because you're not editing someone else's code. You're building your own from an example. So step 1 is the copy the group1.sql file from your lib1 folder. So we're going to take a look at this group account 1.sql file. I'm just going to take and open this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a file over here in my lab 4 folder. So we're going to say create new text file. I'm going to call this group account 1 underscore lab.sql. All right, I'm going to pop that open. I'm also going to pop, real quick, I'm going to pop open, that's the wrong one. Let's go CIT225. I'm going to pop open this lab 4. Because we're going to also keep this handy as well, because you'll notice that this has all of these in here. All right. Now, the nice thing is you can leave this and just call it, which is pretty much what we're going to do. And it has all the validation in it. So when you're ready to run, you can just run apply Oracle Lab 4. If you want to, you can even comment if you don't want to see the error as you're working on this. What I would do is I would just comment all these out until you get to them. So we're working on group account lab 1, so I'm going to leave that there. Let's save this.
Hey, can I ask a question on that really quickly?
Sure.
Why do some of them have the double @ sign and some of them only have the one @ sign?
The double @ sign, what was it? It's something about the way it logs it. They essentially do the same thing, almost.
So is there a best practice then for those?
Let me tell you the difference real quick. I just have to Google it to remind myself. I had the same question last semester. I think I remember. There's really not, to be honest.
Good to know. That's all I needed to know.
For us, it doesn't matter too much. Right here. Here it is. So a single @ symbol runs a script in the current directory or one specified with a full or relative path. The @ will start SQL+ script that is in the same directory as the script that called it. So essentially, it's just all about if you want to. So the single runs it in the current directory. And then the double will start SQL+ script that is in the same directory as a script that called it. So what this is doing is you guys have all seen that if you run a lab, so like let's go into mine, and like I ran lab 3, and you'll notice that I have all of my lab 2 log files in here now, right? And that's because it has the double @ sign. And so it's going to run it because lab 3 called lab 2. But so if you want your log files not to show up, put the double @ sign in the lab that's calling it. So for example, because like let's open up lab3.sql. That one runs it in the current directory. If I go to lab 2, these ones have the doubles. So what this is saying is that it's going to run these in the same directory as the script that's calling it, essentially. So basically, it's all about where you want your log files to end up or your home directory. So ultimately, it doesn't matter too much. You can play around with it, see if it gets your log files where you want them. But ultimately, yeah, it doesn't matter too much. It all just depends on where it wants your working directory to be when it runs it. Good question. Maybe I'll remember that for next semester because I know it's going to come up again. Anyways, all right, let's get working on this lab. So we have our group account 1, which is the one that works with the base tables. But what we want to do is we want to work on ours that works with our lab table. So I'm going to open up this file, and you'll notice that it's plain Jane. Now, this is where you can choose to either copy the whole thing over or go step by step. I personally like to go step by step because then that way I can kind of test each step as I go. So the first thing we want to do is open a log file. And we're going to spool. This is another thing I wanted to talk about because I've just noticed it from lab 2. And it doesn't really say and it's not going to affect your score at all. But if you want to be able to differentiate log files, you can change this name. So like a lot of the log files that were submitted were like the very common one was it was still like create, because if you copied lab 2, it was create oracle store.txt for lab 2, and so then you're overriding your log file. So what I would say is just make sure your spool if you wanted to, because like if we were to copy this, it would say group account 1, and then we wouldn't have the base one there. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say group account lab.txt. That way we get the 2 individual files. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to start our chained insert. So we are going to say member group 1. And I'm going to put a bunch of comments in here because we're going to reuse these. So we're going to say insert into member. And then we're going to say contact 1. I'm going to say insert into contact. And I guess I should say lab here. Let's we're going to do our insert into contact. We're going to do our insert into what comes after contact. I think it's address. Then we're going to insert into telephone lab finally. All right. And that's essentially what we're going to do. Now, what's nice is, like in this case, we're doing a group. So we're going to have more than one contact. So now that I have this, I could essentially, if we were going to do our pseudo code here to essentially show what we're going to do, we're going to do this. We do the one member and then the two contacts. Well, I'm going to take this out because we want to copy this once we actually have code in there to save ourselves some time. So now what we're going to do is we're going to insert into member. Now, this is where, because I'm not the type that says, you know, reinvent the wheel. If it helps you learn by typing it, feel free to type it instead of copy and paste it. You don't have to copy and paste it. If you want to just challenge yourself and see if you can do it from memory, that's great as well. But I'm going to take and just copy this in here. Now, we do have to change some things because this isn't going to work currently because we're inserting into member lab, not member. So we're going to change the table, obviously, and then we know that we changed our primary keys. If you have any doubts, let's ask a question here. If don't know what needs to be changed to underscore lab, or if I'm curious about what column names are, what can I do? What are some different ways that I can find what column names are in a table?
Describe.
You can go to
Describe,
developer.
Yep. So SQL Developer's one if you want a nice graphical user interface option, and then describe. My favorite's describe because, like all things with the terminal, it's quick, it's dirty, it's fast. I love it. So we go describe, and I'm going to do member lab. Oh, and I guess it helps if I hit the shift key and the other one at the same time. And so then I have a list of all of my columns. And so then I can come here and say, okay, member lab ID, member type, account number, credit card type, created by, creation date, last updated by, last update date. We got it, right? And the big thing is we just want to make sure we have the correct column names, especially where those underscore labs are. That's probably the number one thing that comes up when people are like, oh, why isn't this working? It'll say something like, oh, this is not in fact, you know, let's just try it. Let's do this. We're gonna pretend that we missed that, right? Let's take this, copy it, paste it. An invalid identifier. If you get an invalid identifier, the response I'm going to give you is, well, make sure that your column names are the same. So you run a describe, and then you can say like, oh, I did a typo or whatever. So we're going to fix that. And again, wow, I'm not typing good. All right, and then so once you have your column names all set, then you're good to go. And we're going to do another couple examples of how you can actually save some of that error just by taking that right out, because you'll notice we're inserting into all of these in order. So we technically don't need this, but the nice thing is about it is at least you can see it, so that way you're matching up, and it does take a little bit of the possibility of error out of the equation. So the next thing we want to do is we want to make sure we're using the right thing here. So sequences, I know we've talked a lot about sequences. They're going to count for us. They're what's making sure we don't use the same primary key. And we let the computer track it for us, because if we have, you know, 5 people all trying to do an insert at the same time, you know, us humans are going to try to use the same number. So we're going to just let the computer handle it for us, because the numbers shouldn't matter at all anyways. So we're going to use the sequence, but we want to make sure we use the right sequence, because this is the tough part. If you forget to change this, this actually works. But the problem is that instead of ending up with 1001, like we should, we end up with, let's just see what we end up with. We would end up with, and I'm going to do curve out so we don't mess it up. Oh, and I don't have it in there yet, because technically we're supposed to run that pre-seed. So let's hurry and do that real quick. because at the time of running, you should have your lib1 folder pre-seed. This one should already be done. So I'm actually going to run this real quick. We're going to actions, open in terminal. SQL plus. Because this one's going to insert into all of our base tables for us. Run our seeding.sql. And there we go. That should be good. All right, so now if I was going to rerun this same command, this will tell us where our index is, or our sequence is currently at. Maybe. Let's just run the next file. There we go. So we get our, and maybe I was only supposed to use one R. I have to, yeah, I think it's just one R. But anyways, if we were to use this one, we'd end up with 1009 instead of 1001. So we want to make sure we use our sequence, which is, and I think it's not that, it's like this. Member underscore lab underscore s1.nextval. And what that's going to do is it's going to keep track of it for us. If you're used to MySQL, that is essentially the auto increment feature. And someone did ask, is there an auto increment feature in Oracle like there is in MySQL? And the answer is there is not. They are sequences. And even in Postgres, there's they have what's called a serial data type, which is essentially auto increment. But what you don't know is when you create a serial data type is it actually creates the sequence on the back end. And the reason that is because the sequence has a lot of benefits, which I'm not going to go too much into, but it gives you a lot of flexibility as far as what you can do. They're very powerful. Every time I work with MySQL, I actually wish that they had sequences because they are very, very nice, especially for utilitarian purposes. You can just manipulate the sequence. For example, student numbers. Let's say that you have student numbers that you like to format a certain way based on the year or their entry year or the year they're supposed to graduate. Every year you just change your sequence to start with a different number and your primary key is automatically adjusting. Or you can create a sequence just for the simple fact of assigning student numbers. So there's a lot of utilitarian purposes as to why. It's not as easy because you have to define it, but like I said, the one nice thing is Postgres, it actually has a data type which kind of does it for you, but you still have all the features. That's why Postgres kind of gaining a lot of momentum. But anyways, let's continue. So member type is null, just like we talked about how we had that one that was a dotted line because member type. And then we have account number. We're going to leave that. Credit card number, we're going to leave that. Now this is a subquery, right? And a subquery is going to pull a value. So in fact, let's grab this, take this and copy it, and we're going to just run this. We're going to just run this subquery in here, and you'll notice that we get one value. We get a common lookup ID of 1025. Well, what that is it's the row in common lookup that has member and discover card. Basically, we're defining what kind of credit card is this. So their credit card with the number 11112222333444 is a discover card. That's essentially what we're doing. When you have drop downs on Amazon that says what kind of card is this, now they kind of know automatically. But back on some of the older sites, you still have to choose what kind of card it is. They have a common lookup table or a credit card type table that has discover card in it, and that's where they pull from. So anyways, what we're doing here is we are tying this because, like I said, the numbers shouldn't matter because we should be tying to each other based on subqueries, because that way it doesn't matter what the number is. We should never care what these numbers are for the most part. All we care about is that it's actually tied to the correct thing. So we use these subqueries, and you can test a subquery just by copying what's inside of here into there. Now, but this is pulling from common lookup, and we want to pull from common lookup lab. So we need to change a couple things. The first thing is our table name. I'm going to change that. And then we changed our common lookup lab ID because it's the primary key. Subqueries, for the most part, will pretty much pull primary keys when we're doing inserts and stuff like this. If it's a foreign key value, it's probably pointing to the primary key. And again, if you need to know what's in there, what the table names are, you can describe common lookup lab and see. Common lookup lab ID, the rest are the same, so we're good. Now, the other thing that people miss, so we changed the table name, the column name that we're selecting. Now, this is the one where people get hung up a lot, because if we select everything from common lookup lab, actually, before we do that, let's just do this. Let's say I think I'm done. I would say always check your subqueries. And you, like I said, you can do that just by copying it. Let's paste it, add a semicolon. We run this, and you'll notice that we get no row selected. If I were to try to run this whole statement here, we are going to get, you cannot insert null into credit card type. That's because this subquery didn't pull any rows. So if you get this error, because most likely you'll get this error first, because most people aren't going to check their subqueries first, especially once you get in the roll of things. If you get this error, this is exactly where you should look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off where filters and just see where I get. So I'm going to paste this in here, and I'm going to say, okay, let's see if discover card is the issue. So let's just take off that last and piece. Nope, no rows selected. Okay, let's try again. But this time I'm just going to take no where clause, because we're going to cut off this now. So we're going to say select common lookup ID from common lookup lab. And in this case, we're just going to say select everything from common lookup lab, because that's all that's left. And then we can look in here. Now, you'll notice that this is all ugly and gross. You can change that by saying set line size to a number. And in this case, I'm going to say 250. And then we're going to rerun this, and you'll notice that it comes out a lot cleaner. That's how we set the length of our window there. So set line size, and you can adjust that last number to a different value. But then if we look in here, we can kind of compare this to why we weren't getting any value. So let's look at our subquery. And we're saying, okay, everything, we're selecting common lookup lab ID from common lookup lab. So what we're seeing here, then we filter and we say where common lookup context is equal to member. Common lookup context is equal to member. Well, we don't have any members, so that's why we weren't pulling any rows. But what do we have? Oh, we have member underscore lab. So that's probably most likely our issue. So let's change this to lab, and then let's rerun our subquery here. And we get one value only, so we know we're good. So that subquery is good. The next thing we want to do is do the next subquery. And we should be getting the hang of it a little bit more now. So we're going to just pop in here, change the column name, change this table name, system username. Now, again, we can, let's just see if we pull anything. See what we get. Copy, paste, semicolon. We get one value, so we're good. And then what's nice is a little, I guess not going to be say pro tip, because it's definitely not like a pro thing, but a little trick is that these who audit columns are pretty much always going to be the same. So rather than reinvent the wheel, we can just paste that again. So now I'm going to test this, because I kind of like to just test as I go, like I said. So the nice thing is, as I'm building, and this is kind of how I do all my databases, even as I'm developing them, what I do is I write it in a text editor, and then I actually just run it. So let's just paste this in here. And if I get one row created, I know it's good, and I'm going to move on. So let's move on to the next step. So that's our membership, and we're going to move a little bit faster now. So our first member's in. So now we're going to do contact one. And you'll notice in here that it says insert the first contact in a group user, and we go from contact to address to street address to telephone before we do the other one. And there's a reason we're going to do that, and we're going to talk about that quite a bit here. So let's grab this contact. We're going to copy. Let's paste it right in here. All right, and we're going to give this the same treatment, but this time we have to change 2 because we have our primary key and the foreign key that were both changed. And again, you can always run describe if you need to. We're going to do our contact lab S1 and our member lab S1. So now here's where the magic happens, because we want this contact to be tied to this membership, right? So because we're using sequences, and this is where that sequence thing comes really in handy. So up here, you notice we used next val, and that generated a number of 1001. In theory is what it should have been because it's the first one. So that just generated 1001, and we inserted it. In fact, let's just look. If we select everything from member lab, I guess it's 1002 for whatever reason. I might have it started at 1002, or maybe I did a query and queried it. But we have 1002 here, and that's our membership, our member lab ID. Now we want this essentially to say 1002, and we could type that in there manually, but that would be terrible practice. So what we do is, instead of doing this query thing, because a lot of times you want to tie something to something, but you don't actually know the commonality between them. Like you don't know a subquery, because like in this case, we know how to subquery it, but there wouldn't be any way to know that this contact's tied to this. There's no common data between them. We just kind of need to insert this all in order as it happens. So what we do is we use the sequence. So we pull the current value. So if I were to do select member lab S1 dot, and is it 2 R's? I believe it's 2 R's. Yep. Dot curval from dual, I get 1002, which is exactly what's going to pull right here, effectively linking this contact to the most recent member. So for the most part, as long as you're doing your inserts all at the same time, it will actually tie everything together this way. We use next val because this is just it's a new record here, but we want to tie to the existing. So does that make sense to everybody, how that works, these sequences in this context? I guess the better question is anyone confused? And if you are, feel free to speak up, because if you are, the odds are there's going to be someone else. Okay, I'm going to take that as everyone's okay with it. So yeah, this curval is going to link it to the most recent member record. So now what we want to do is we want to fix our subqueries. Now this is going to be a very similar thing as what was above. So we want to make sure we change this, make sure these are all uppercase. Case does matter in there. Randy win. And then we can change. And again, if you want to, I guess not cheat, but if you want to save yourself some keystrokes, because those are going to be the same, you can just take and do our who audit columns and just paste that same subquery right in there. Let's test it. We get a row created. Now you're going to follow this same process all the way down. You'll want to make sure that the primary key is always using the next val, and the foreign keys are using curval to tie to the existing one. You're going to do this for all these. So we're going to pretend that we did this, because obviously I'm not going to do it all for you. So once you're done, you'll notice that we're actually going to insert multiple members or multiple contacts tied to this single member. That's why it's called group account, right? It's a group account, meaning multiple people tied to the same membership. So what I'm going to do is, once I finish with one person, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to just say, you know, like, and did I copy the comment at the top. I'm going to say, you know, now this is contact 2. And rather than rewrite the whole thing, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the data that's in here. So let's come over here and find the second contact. Here it is. So the first one we did was Randy Wynn. So we're just going to change what we need to. So we're going to change this to Brian, because you'll find that there's not much that changes. So we change that to Brian, you know, and you go on down the line. Just change the data that needs to be changed. So you'll have to look for some differences, but it does save it. Or if you want to, you feel free just to copy it and go through the same process, whichever is up to you. But anyways, that's how these group accounts work and the chained inserts. You'll go through, you'll create all of one, you'll do the membership that's common amongst all of them. So that's kind of where the hierarchy comes in, because if we go back here, member is common to all of these records below it, even if there's multiple contacts. So like in this case, we have one member. They all share the same credit card number. Both Brian and Randy Wynn both share that same member record. So you're going to do all your inserts in there in the order of the hierarchy. That's why we started with member, went to contact, did address, street address, and then telephone. Technically, we could have done address, telephone, street address, but hey, it works. Either way. So I guess going back to the instructions, let's take a look here. So you're going to first do group account 1. Then you're going to do group account 2, and group account 2 is going to be like almost identical, just different people, all right? So once you finish group account 1, maybe you just want to copy that over and change the names and such for group account 2. Because you're going to do the Wins, Ryan and Brandy. Then you're going to do Oscar and Doreen Visquel. No, I'm probably butchering that, sorry. And then you're going to do group account 3 with the Sweeneys. And the Sweeneys have 3, but same process. One member, three of the sets of contact through telephone. All right, so then we get down on step 4. We do inserts to item. And that one actually is pretty simple, because at that point, we don't even have to chain. Let's save that. And sorry, my windows are a mess here right now. So let's look at our item inserts. Item inserts.sql right here. If we take a look at this, you'll notice that we just go through and we do items. So this is one that I would suggest you just take, copy all of it, and go through and change it. Or if you want, you can build one insert into item. Build one insert into item, and then just take and copy that and just change the values, the hard-coded values. Because if you do that, the only things that really are going to change is this, this, and this. Right? So however you want to do it, just know that you have a perfect example here. You just got to make it work for your lab table. So there's the item inserts. Step 5 is you do the create insert contact. So this is where things get just a little bit different. So let's take a look. Okay, so you'll notice that this one looks a little different, and that's because it very much is. Because right up here at the top, we have this procedure. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to automate some of this for us, right? It's going to, because we did our group accounts, and then this is going to build a bunch of individual accounts, because a lot of the data, as you saw, is the same. So the key here is this is going to save us a lot of work, but we need to edit a few things. And so that's kind of what we're going to walk through just a little bit, because this is PL SQL, but you'll notice if you just ignore the PL SQL parts, it's just running SQL for us. So insert into member, obviously we want to insert into member lab. Now, obviously don't edit your create insert contacts like I was about to do. What we want to do is we would copy this and discard my changes. Let's go to my lab 4. We could create new, or we could just take and copy it, whichever, or I'm just going to create new. Create, what was it called? Contact insert. We're just going to paste this in here. Now we have one that we can edit. So obviously we want to edit the lab table. And this is kind of just going to be what you've been doing with the other ones. We're going to change our table name, our primary key, our sequence, and this kind of stuff. The only thing that's going to be different is you'll notice where we normally had like values, like the credit card number and the account number, is now they have this what's called a variable. So the variables are already defined up here, which are going to be then used to do multiple inserts for us. So what this means is that we get to create a script that we only have to write once, but it's going to potentially do it potentially could do an infinite number of inserts for us. So we did that. We changed those. We need to do our common lookup stuff. Common lookup context is equal to member lab. I want to make sure we are. Oop. There we go. The hard part about this is you don't get to test it. Now, let's say that this is, if you wanted to insert these all manually, you absolutely could. Because all we're going to check at the end is that all the rows are there. So if you get the validation queries at the end that are all accurate, it doesn't matter how the rows got there as long as they're all there. So if you wanted to just insert these manually, like you did with the group accounts, but just with one, feel free to do that. But I'm going to show you this way just because that's what the instructions are showing. So you'll notice that we're basically just going to change the same things that we changed on all the other tables. The nice thing is that we just get to do this once. Now, this multiple, we're going to scroll back up here because you'll notice multiple doesn't have underscore lab on it. So we're not going to change this one. Street address lab. And this one we're going to change everything on. Because we're actually going to give this a whirl so you can see what it does. Because essentially what we're going to do is it's going to make it so instead of having multiple individual account files, it's kind of going to do this. Well, we still have individual account files, but we are going to, it's going to make it a lot easier for us. Oh, and one more thing we need to do on this procedure, because it already exists, we're going to say contact insert lab right up here on this create or replace procedure. And then down here, we're going to end contact insert lab. Let's save this. Now this is where it gets a little bit tricky. So we edit it. We believe it's going to work. So let's run that. Let's say contact insert lab.sql. And you'll say procedure created. Now the important thing to remember is that it created the procedure, but it didn't run. It didn't actually insert anything. It just created it. Basically, it's like creating a function. You can create the function, but that doesn't mean it ran, because that's what a procedure is. It's just a function. But the difference between function and procedure is a procedure does not return anything. A function has a return value. A procedure just does something. And in this case, this one's going to insert stuff for us. So we have that. If you get this procedure created, we're good. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to break this on purpose. Okay, so let's say I have a typo. Let's just say I forget to change telephone to telephone lab. Let's save this. I'm going to rerun that file. And let's see. I guess that wouldn't, did I save, I didn't, did I save that? Let's try again. Let's get you out of the way. I guess let's try to break it worse. Let's see what we get. There we go. So you'll notice that this says procedure created with compilation errors, because it's going to do a quick parse. And the reason that that didn't break before is because telephone's an actual real table. But if you get this error, notice it doesn't say anything. And you're going to be like, whoa, this is not helpful at all. What's wrong? Once you run it, if you type show errors, it will tell you what's wrong. So you'll notice that here on line blah, 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 it encountered blah, and then you can look and see. And in that case, we know exactly what we did because we broke it. And then let's rerun it. Procedure created. We can show errors and it says no errors. So we're good. So now let's take a look at the next step in the instructions, because the next step should have us edit a couple of files here. So we have our individual accounts.sql script. So let's go ahead and copy that. Let's go grab it. Oracle lib1 seed individual accounts.sql. Well, real quick, let's make sure we didn't miss anything here. Yep, okay. So now let's go here, and you'll notice that what we're doing is this is where we're going to insert all of our people. Now, because these all have their own memberships, you know, they're single, they're not sharing their membership with anyone. You know, they're just one person per membership. And instead of writing out all this multiple times, what that procedure did for us is it's going to let us just basically define all the different values that make that person unique, and it's going to insert it for us. So you'll notice this says contact insert, and then it just has all of our variables. Well, we're passing those parameters to the procedure, and it's going to insert everything for us. So that way we don't have to, it saves us a lot of typing, because essentially we're reusing the same code. Now, what we want to do first is we want to change our, well, first things first is we want to make sure we don't overwrite the lab file. You'll be surprised how often that happens. People are like, oh, my stuff isn't working all of a sudden, and it's because they edited the real ones, which we can always get you another copy, but it's easier just to avoid the confusion. So let's come here, create a new txt file, individual accounts lab.sql. Pop this open. Let's paste this in. Now, a few things we have to change. First, let's generate a new log file that says _lab in it. Now, we changed our procedure to be contact insert lab, and that's because let's see if it's already there. If we come in here and go to procedures, you'll notice that we already have this contact insert and contact insert lab. It already showed up in here, but that's because just like our tables, our procedures are also objects, meaning that they can only exist once. They're unique. So we can't have contact insert twice. So if I ran this without changing this, we're going to insert into contact, not contact underscore lab. So we want to use the procedure that we just created. So we want to make sure we change that. But what's really nice is after that, all this stuff should be the same. We don't have to touch any of this other stuff. So let's give it a whirl. Let's test that theory, huh? So we do this, and you could do find and replace, but that always makes me nervous. So if there was hundreds, I would do it, but there's not that many. All right, now down here we have our validation query. I would suggest just deleting this because it's not going to pull anything. Anyways, if you copy from those, from the lib1 folder, just delete the validation queries because we want to use the ones out of here because this one pulls the lab tables, not the base table ones. So you don't want to get a false sense of security. So we're going to put that in there. And then let's go ahead and execute this file. So let's give her a run. All right, so then we go, and for whatever reason, I got no rows selected, but it did say that it did it completely. So let's just go ahead and select everything from contact lab. Oh, so something didn't work. So there's a good example. Let's troubleshoot this. Let's troubleshoot it. Oops. So let's go back here. We're going to open up our contact insert lab.sql file. All right, so let's make sure we got everything. And I'm be willing to bet that that was our issue. We were missing this lab here, so let's go ahead and give that a shot. We are still not getting any rows, so let's make sure there's not something else that we're missing. So one other thing that we can do is we can make this print out the error for us, which is what we're going to do right now. I'm actually glad this came up because this is perfect, because if it's happening to me, there's a good chance it's probably going to happen again. So let's grab the PL SQL that we need to make this show us. I want it to look the same as what he does. External tables, there it is. Well, maybe. I know it's here somewhere. It's in the airport one. Where is the airport one? Okay, here it is. We are going to make this print us the errors so we can see. So right here, what I'm going to do is add this one line, and we're going to say dbms output.putLine, and we are going to output the error. Get out of there. We are going to say output the SQL code. Let's give that a shot here. Well, what's odd is it's not throwing any errors, so let's try. It's not throwing any errors, so that means that there isn't. Is it committing? Let me make sure I haven't goofed up here. Let's close SQL Plus, close without save. So in here, we're using what's called a transaction, meaning that if we do something without committing it, then it doesn't actually save, which is what I'm worried is going on. So we're going to give this a shot. Still nothing. So let's go through here and make sure this works. Tell you what, let's run it in here. Let's go. All right, so that must not be it. Unless I have a ton of commits. You know, in fact, just to test, I'm going to do this. Okay. Basically what I'm doing is I'm just shutting down my database, make sure there's not something goofed up somewhere. Well, maybe I'll have to get back to you on this one because there's something here that it doesn't like, but for some reason it's not throwing an error. So in this case, I'm just going to double check things here real quick. You know, let's do this. So this is just me troubleshooting. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have it select everything from the table as I go along. And then that way, when it finishes, I should be able to see, hopefully, where it dies. And my bet is it's actually right here. The comments and inserts really throw it off for some reason. So let's just try it. All right. and because I changed that, and you know what's funny? You know how we changed this to lab and we saved it and we tried to rerun it? I never actually recreated that procedure. So this is a classic example of just one of those gotchas. So you'll notice here, this is our procedure, right? This is our function. And we changed this to say _lab. We hit save. But we probably didn't rerun that to recreate the procedure with the correct stuff, just like if you made a mistake on the table. And you have to recreate, you have to drop it, recreate it. So we're actually going to go test that theory real quick. This is a great example because that, good. And I finally realized that, and I can almost bet money that that's what it is. It's failing on the telephone insert. But actually, before we do that, let's try this just so we can. Did I save that? Oh, we're going to have to rerun it to make that change. So we won't get to test that theory. So let's go here to procedures. And if I click on this contact insert lab, we can open this. And if I come down here to telephone, yeah, notice that it doesn't say _lab, even though we saved it. And that's because we need to rerun that file. That file that we need to rerun, we need to rerun the contact insert lab because that's the procedure. So if you make a change to the procedure, make sure you rerun the procedure. So now I get compilation errors. And now we can go through a whole bunch of fun. So let's say show errors, an into clause, so we can't do the select statement. So let's go back here. And what we're going to do is we're going to hit Control Z, get rid of all those selects that we put in there. There we go. Now we're going to hit save. We're going to rerun the procedure. And that's how we get it ran. So now let's run our individual accounts lab. And there we go. Wow. So anyways, it happens to all of us. Proof right there. So now you just know that I know how you feel a lot of the times. So anyways, that was fun. So moral of the story, if you change the procedure, let's make sure we remember to rerun it to create the procedure correctly, or else we're going to get the same output every time, even if we save the file, because we're not actually running from the file, we're running from the procedure that is in the database. So now if I double click this, it has the _lab, the change that we made. So yeah, fun. It's Tuesday. I wish it were Monday because then I'd have an excuse, but anyways, it works. So anyways, so now you can see that saved us. Actually, it was supposed to save us a bunch of work. In this case, I'm not sure it did, but it saved us a bunch of work. So let's continue on because we are almost out of time. We're almost an hour and a half. So let's go here. So we did our, I got to go back to lab 4. I was taking that out of there. All right, so we did our step for the individual accounts, which is step 6. Now, step 7 is an update members.sql file. And this is going to be, I believe it's a similar situation. So let's get rid of you guys. All right, let's go into our lib1 seed. And this is our update members.sql. And again, we're going to go and create our own. So we're going to say create new txt file, update members lab.sql. Now this one we're not going to use a procedure, but this is kind of the first really intense update thing we have, and I'm going to delete this before we forget. All right, so an update is where we update data. We're going to update all member type values based on the number of dependent contact rows. So if you remember right, we were inserting null into member type. You know, the real reason is we didn't know what we wanted there at the time, or maybe we just wanted to give you an excuse to run an update. But what we're going to do is we're going to be smart, and instead of try to put that in manually, we're going to build this update statement that will change the type based on how many people, how many contacts are attached to a member. So this kind of looks a little crazy, but don't worry, we're going to walk through it. Because what this is going to do is it's going to, if we look at our member, let's do this real quick. Let's select everything from common lookup lab, where common lookup context is equal to member lab. And let's change our line size to 250 and rerun that. There we go. So you'll notice that we have our Discover card, our MasterCard, and our Visa card, but these other two, we have a group membership and an individual membership. So here's what we want. So on our group accounts, you know, the ones that had multiple contacts, we're obviously going to want the membership type to be 1004. For the ones that were just the one person, we want that to be 1003. And what we're going to do is we're going to be smart and let the computer decide for us which it should be. So we're going to update member lab, and we're going to set member type equal to, and then we're going to have this subquery here. And we're going to pull the common lookup lab ID from common lookup lab, where the common lookup context, just like we did here, is equal to member underscore lab. And common lookup type is equal to, and then we're going to have another subquery. We're going to select the member type from, and then again another subquery. So we're now 3 subqueries nested. So now we're going to start here. So we're going to select the member ID from contact. Well, we don't want to select from contact. We want to select from contact lab. Now, someone in Slack asked, what is this? What does this see? And what does this see? And all that. So this is called a table alias. And what that does is basically we're giving a nickname to contact lab and saying, look, I'm now going to call you C. And that just saves us typing, makes our code look a little cleaner. And why we do that is because C, now we can say C.member, and we want to change this to lab ID. And now it knows, oh, this member lab ID isn't talking about this member lab ID. It's talking about contact lab ID. So it's called a table alias. So we're going to select the lab ID from contact lab ID. But then we're going to have this. We're going to select the lab ID. And then this case statement does some logic. And we're going to talk a lot more about this later, but just know this is like an if statement. And we're going to say, look, when the count of member lab ID is greater than 1, then it's a group account. Otherwise, it's an individual account. And we're going to call that, so when we say as, we're giving this whole thing a nickname of member type. And whenever we do a count, we have to group by. So we're going to change this to member lab ID. Now, just to show you what this does, let's take this and let's see if we can make this run in here by itself. And there we go. Now, I'm only getting individuals because I actually never ran my group account files because I didn't finish it. I was going to let you guys do that. So when you run that, if you want to test it, which I suggest you do test it, you will want to make sure that you get your individuals and group. I'm only getting individual because there was only those in there. I don't have any member records that are tied to multiple contacts. All right, so then we got this figured out, right? And it pulls this. Well, the query above it just selects the member type. So it actually, so like, let's actually just take and pull this. So let's paste this. So a lot of times you have to use subqueries just to get an aggregate value, because in this case we want the member lab ID and whether it's an individual or a group, but we had to get that from the count, so we had to do that. So now if I run this, yeah, it looks like we have a DT. Where's that DT at? Oh, I forgot to keep this in there. So let's try this one more time. So now we end up with just the member type because that's all we selected from this. Because once we have this, and that's why I like to test it, because anytime you have an embedded select statement, it actually ends up being a table temporarily. So this acts just like a table, and we're calling that table DT. I don't know why they call it DT, but usually I call it temp or whatever, something meaningful. And then we select member type, which is what we call the individual or group thing. Then, so now we're past our 2 subqueries, and now we're back to the main subquery here. And we want to select it where the member lab ID is equal to m.member lab ID. Because this is where we're matching the member that we're updating to the member that we decided whether it was group or individual. And then once we're done, we can take this, paste it in there, and you notice that we get 6 rows updated. And then we can then run our test from the lab instructions to make sure that we get our accounts. Now you should see some groups there. Like I said, I haven't done it. And then obviously we do our alter table to turn on that not null constraint. So that way we can't insert null anymore. You have to do that. Anyways, does that make sense to everybody? All that going on right there?
Surprisingly, yes.
You know, and like I said, that's kind of why I show you this one, because this one actually, I feel like for where we're at in the classes, this is pretty complicated. I mean, 3 nested subqueries. So that's why I like to actually show you that one. But hopefully as you see it, it makes sense. So that way in the future, when we actually start to add subqueries to our own queries, that you'll be like, oh, you know, this is possible. That's kind of how it works. And really, once you understand it, it's just a matter of looking at it. Because, like, you know, we ran this, saw what it selected, and then we know, oh, we're just selecting the member type from this, which is either individual or group, you know, these 2 strings. And then from there, we are just selecting the common lookup lab ID, where it's equal to member lab, and the common lookup type is either group or individual. And then from there, we are setting member type and member to be equal to the common lookup lab ID, where these 2 match, because we've already determined, you know, here we have member lab ID, and we have whether it was an individual or group. So then we just go, we match so that we're updating the right one, and it gets the common lookup lab ID where it's group or individual. So a lot of this is just reverse engineering queries. And in fact, I'm going to give you a little pro tip. A lot of times you can reverse engineer the validation queries to find errors in your code. So a lot of times I use these to basically find where code's wrong. And we'll talk more about that in the future because it will come up. So anyways, this is what you should end up with at the end, because then we do rental inserts. And rental inserts Let's take a look, make sure there's nothing weird there. I believe that one is just like the other ones, rental inserts .sql. Yep, and so this one is just like the other ones. You're going to do a nested subquery again, or not a nested subquery. You're going to do the chained inserts for rental and rental items. So you'll notice that this does the same thing as like what we did with member and contact. But the difference is in this one, it's just too deep because a rental can have multiple items in the rental. You know, like you go to the, just like in Amazon, you have an order and that order can potentially have multiple items. And so that's what we have. We have a rental, which is, you know, a single transaction. And within that transaction, we can have multiple items. So what we do is we insert the rentals and then we insert the items. Now, in this case, it doesn't actually use the chained inserts. It uses the subquery. However, you can do this one however you want. You'll notice that this one, it just finds the rental where it's someone's name. If you wanted to, you could do this as a chained insert. If you want to copy it and do it the way they do, that's fine. If you want to do the chained insert, that's fine as well. However you want. But you'll notice that we do 5 inserts here and 9 here. So there is going to be some people that have more than one movie in their rental. Does everyone feel comfortable to the point where they feel like, yeah, you know, I can do this one without being too nervous about it? Everyone's being awfully quiet. That makes me nervous.
Well, you're feeling the same way we are.
Yeah, it looks easy now while you do it.
Yeah. So anyways, but I guess just to make you feel better, this is going to be very similar. And worst case scenario, basically what you're going to do is you can copy this, and really worst case scenario, if you want to, all you have to do is make sure that all the table names match, all the sequence names match, all the columns name match. And that's pretty much it, because there isn't any common lookup stuff in here as far as like make sure you have like item lab or whatever. So yeah, this should be, by the time you get to here, I think you guys should be pretty much pros at this. You know, making sure this all works. And what's nice is once you get one, this sounds like a lot of work. Once you get one, it's really easy to get the others. It's just a matter of changing them. So anyways, let's for the sake of time, let's continue on. I'm going to leave you guys with that one. I think you'll be good. So the last one here, I believe, let me make sure. Yep. So the last one is this create view. So I really want to talk about what a view is real quick. A view is a table that pulls from other tables. So like, you know, let's say you have this select statement, right, that we did here. You know, and it pulled this. Well, we could actually save this as a view, which is essentially a table. So like, let's say I did select last name, first name, and let's say I want the telephone number too. So let's do select c.last name. No, let's just do it with the actual thing. Let's just show you. Create view.sql. So what this is it's just it's a query. So here we have this query, and we're actually just going to take this and we're going to run it. And I get no rows selected, probably because I haven't ran my insert thing for lab 4. But anyways, once you're done with the lab, this should work, and it should work for you guys anyways. Right off the bat, this base one, theirs does. You'll notice that I get no rows selected here, and that's probably because there's some table somewhere that I haven't inserted into with the base tables. But essentially what this is a query, but what we do is we add, let me get this out of here since we're done with it. Let's get this out of here. Let's get this out of here. But what we do is we just add this line to the top. We say create or replace view current rental as this. And so then what we can do is we can say select everything from current rental. And you'll notice that that says no row selected because it's what it's doing is it's actually running this query, but just like a table. And the nice thing about it is that way, if you have something you use a lot, such as this, what this is going to do is it's going to say, oh, here's all the rentals that are currently active. You know, what are the, like, so for the movie store, what movies are people renting right now? This is probably something very similar to like what Amazon and Apple have for their metrics. I want to know what movies people are renting right now, and then they can do more things with it, such as, you know, how many of each movie are rented, because this is going to pull the accounts and what movie. And so rather than them write this query and then do that whole subquery like we did with our update statement, they can then just use this like a normal table. So what you're going to do with this is you're going to just change this to current rental lab. And then you're going to change this query to make it work with your lab tables. So let's do this real quick. I'm gonna make mine work really fast so we can show you. I'm using some I guess it helps to be in SQL+. Clean up Oracle.SQL. There we go, and okay, so now I have stuff. So this should work now. So let's run this. Now, did I change anything? No, I didn't. So let's run this subquery. And we're going to see what we get here. So here are our active rentals. And you know that we have a checkout date and the return date is in the future. So in this case, they're active because these guys aren't going to return this until the 2nd of February, 1920 is when all these are returned. So that means that they're active. Well, what we want to do is we want to use this, you know, a few times. So let's copy this. So I'm going to create this as a view. So you'll notice that I get view created. So now instead of having to run all this code, which, you know, can get pretty complicated, I can just say this. I can select everything from current rental. And then I get what I want. And let's make it even prettier by fixing our thing here again and redoing it. And there we go. So there we get our nice, easy, already pre-compiled data, because normally this is a pretty complex thing here. So now I'm going to just real quick go over a little bit about what's going on here. So again, you'll notice that we have these aliases because we're going to do some joins here. And I don't want you to worry too much about the joins right now because we are going to cover them next week. So just know that what we're doing is we're combining data from multiple tables, because you notice we have their names, then we have an item, and then we have rental data. So we have a lot of data coming from a lot of different places. So what we need to do is change column names. So let's make sure we don't have any IDs in here. And we're actually good. So the select list doesn't need to have any changes. But our from clause definitely does. So let's do, we want to select from member lab. And our from clause has tables. And we're not going to change the alias. We're just going to change the actual table names. So we have from member lab, inner join contact lab, and then we say on. How do we want to match these? And like I said, we'll talk about this later. But just know that we're matching out on primary key, foreign key values, which means that we are going to add underscore lab to them. Then we're going to join that with rental lab on the primary key and the foreign key. We're going to interjoin that with rental item lab on the primary key and the foreign key. So someone asked, is the default for inner join in Oracle a left inner join? And actually there isn't really like a left inner join. There's an inner join and a left join. And like I said, we're going to talk a lot about this next week. There's not really a default. So we'll talk next week. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves here. Next week is probably my favorite lab. And it will make this make a lot more sense. It's just, you can, there's a reason joins have a lab unto themselves. Oh no, you're good. I'm glad you asked. That means you're thinking. All right, so common lookup lab, item lab, and common lookup lab ID. So anyways, what we did is, now you'd create your own file for this. I just changed it here for the sake of time. And I'm going to run this, and I shouldn't get table review does not exist because I cleaned up my database, right? So let's real quick, let's go back to lab 4 and let me run my script again. Because I actually just put all of mine in the same one. There we go. It's doing its thing, doing its thing, doing its thing. All right. So now let's paste our query in here again. Okay. So here's a good one. So I changed customer lab ID somewhere. r.customer lab ID right here. So invalid identifier, this is where I go describe rental lab, because I know that's the table we're using. Oh, and customer ID doesn't have a lab, so I'm going to take that out. Now let's take, paste. All right, now we got some records. So once we do that, then we can add the line that says create or replace view as current rental. Now this is going to throw an error. No, it might not, because we haven't created the other one since we cleaned up. On yours, it will throw an error. So I'm going to real quick make this fail. And what we're going to do is change this to current rental lab so it actually works on yours, because that would fail on yours, work on mine, but I don't want to confuse you. So then we get view created, and then we can say select everything from current rental lab, and we get our rows. All right, does that make sense to everybody? I mean, we'll talk about the joins, but do you know enough about, like, you know, the from clause to at least make this work? And I hope you can make it work, because I just showed you how. So anyways, but that's the lab. It is a little bit of work. This one's a little bit of work. Now, once you finish all those, real quick, I guess before we go, you should be able to go to your lab 4 and your lab 4 file should call all of these files. And so you should just be able to run your lab 4 file, and it should call all of these for you. So that way you don't have to call each one individually. You can just do what I did and call. And it will delete everything and recreate it all. and then insert all your stuff and all that fine stuff. And it looks like I actually have an error somewhere in mine. But anyways, it should do that for you. Does everyone feel okay about all that? Chained inserts. All that fun stuff. I guess, does anyone feel like they are just not going to get it? And if so, what part, is there anything that's shaky as far as like an insert statement or sequences and how we use the sequence to do the chained insert? That's really the biggest thing. Most of the other stuff we actually went through. So, worst case scenario, watch the video again. And the reason I did that is because I do feel a lot of the PL SQL stuff is a little bit out of the scope right now. So labs 2 through 4 are very much let's get you introduced, because I tell students this a lot. Databases are kind of tricky because it's a catch-24. To do a select statement, we have to have an understanding of tables and columns and even at some points primary and foreign key values. And then but to know how to have those, you almost have to do an insert statement. And anyways, it's this big catch-22. So kind of where you kind of get thrown in, and that's kind of like the best way. So I view labs 2 through 4 as a very much, here's a perfect example. Here's some practice. Let's get you used to these different concepts while we're still giving you a lot of hand-holding, even though sometimes it might not feel that way. But you do have a perfect working example at your fingertips. Well, in lab 5, we're going to go over joints, and there is no perfect example. You're going to write them from scratch. There's not going to be a file you can look at to see how it's done, because after lab 4, all these underscore lab tables, we're never going to touch them again. So lab 5, we're actually going to use contact. We're going to use member. We're not going to use member underscore lab anymore. And it is that way through the rest of the term, the rest of the course. So, yeah, so, don't be scared by that, because it's actually, I think it's kind of nice, because sometimes this is a little confusing in its own right, given that you're working with someone else's code. But the nice thing is you have a working example there for you. But going into the future, we're going to start from scratch on everything. So, which is kind of nice, because now that you got, basically we're taking the training wheels off, and we're going to let you go, and most really enjoy that. So anyways, no one said anything. So again, if there's something you feel shaky about, I guess speak now or forever hold your peace.
No, I think most of the questions are going to come out in Slack as we're working through it.
Yep, and that's usually the way it works, which is fine. That's actually completely okay. That's actually why I have Slack there, is so I can answer faster. But a lot of times, someone has a problem and 5 other people see the same problem and find the solution. A lot of times you guys, through the hard work method, the bang your head against the wall and try to get it, you guys also get it, answer that for them as well. Yeah, go ahead. I can't hear. I can unmute you. I don't know if it's the mic that's the issue. Would you? Oh, you're unmuted. Okay, yeah. If you want to just ask a question, that's fine as well. Lab folders is in these. They do matter in the sense that your paths. So like if I go to lab 5, that's a bad example. If I go to lab 4, it matters in the sense that these file paths have to be accurate, which is the directories. I mean, you said lab 3 has mostly TXT files. No. So what's kind of hard is these TXT files are going to get generated anywhere you run the script that creates them. So, so for example, let's do this. I'm going to create on my desktop. Okay, I'm going to create a new directory, and I'm going to call it just test. I'm going to go in here. Let's open up a terminal. And I'm going to actually open up my lab 2 just to get the command out of it. Right, so let's say that I just put these in here. Oh. Let's just call those. So I'm going to go ahead and call my at home student data CIT225 Oracle lib cleanup oracle.sql. So someone also had this problem on Slack, which is funny. So if you get this, that means that something has died in your thing. So you can restart the VM. In this case, I'm going to restart Oracle. So excuse me a minute while I do that. Because somewhere along the line, I have basically locked up my database. And hopefully it actually gets shut down. There it goes, yep. Then we can restart it up and so there we ran that, and now I'm going to run the create Oracle store.sql, and we're going to show you so I ran that there, right? And I am in home student desktop test. So now I'm going to open up desktop test, and you'll notice that this .txt file's here.
Okay.
Now mine's an older one that only generates one log file, but if I was running the real one, which I guess I could, this actually would generate all those TXT files. Anytime I run that, it's going to generate those TXT files. It gets a little old, I guess you could say.
Okay.
And yeah, we actually want those lab. Basically, it's just a way of organizing our code, because if you look at basically lab 2, all of our table files are in here. And when we actually call those, even if they're not in lab 4, we're calling them from lab 2. So like if I go into lab 4 here, lab 4 calls lab 3, and then lab 3 calls lab 2.
Okay.
So yeah, so it's basically just a way to organize our code essentially.
Okay.
Good question. One thing else I wanted to talk about real quick, a little bit of housekeeping. I should have done this at the beginning so people don't lose track at the end. But in lab, I finished grading lab 2, and lab 3 is I'm gonna grade that hopefully tonight and tomorrow. So that way you are all caught up. But anyways, a lot of just on how to submit stuff, because a lot of people, and I know like there was a lot of confusion with the log files. So just so you know what you're gonna, when you go to submit, make sure that in your log files you have enough to show that the lab's done. Because I got a lot of like log files that were actually the lab 1 log file, which just says, "Yay, you did it," kind of a thing. But it was for lab 1. So when you go to submit, make sure your log file, so like if I was looking at lab3.txt, I would want to make sure that it has, the stuff that showed that I did the lab. And it's not like you're going to get docked for it, because I just say, please submit the lab. So if you didn't get a score for lab 2, that's why. Make sure you submit those, and I put a comment on all those that needed it. Lab 4, if you put the validation scripts in your file, make sure they're the ones for the underscore lab. And then as long as they're all there, then it makes it a lot easier to grade. Worst case scenario, if you need to, zip your entire lab 4 folder, and you can do that just by going here, right clicking it, saying compress, and then here is a zip. tar.gz would work too, but zip's more common. So if you need to, worst case scenario, just zip the whole thing and ship it. That way we can check it all and make sure it all works. And part of that's for your grade, but really the biggest thing for me is I want to make sure that you're set to go with the next lab. And obviously I can miss things if everything works, but there's one little thing. But for the most part, what I'm checking for is actually to make sure that like you're not going to have some hidden issue in the next lab that causes you to pull your hair out, because I'm bald and I want you guys to keep your hair, because I know I actually enjoy being bald, but you get the gist. So anyways, I've rambled on long enough, but just that little bit of housekeeping. Make sure you're submitting files that show your work, so we can get you points for that, and also make sure that you're all set, because these labs, as you can see, are building on each other. And labs 2, 3, and 4 do that, and then lab 5 is a standalone one. But then lab 6 through lab 11, or lab 6 through 12, all build on each other. So it's really important that I'm going to try and grade as fast as possible, so that way we can, if there's anything you need to fix, that you can get working on the next lab with the comfort of mind, knowing that you're accurate up to there. So that's the main reason, to make sure that we are all set. But anyways, thank you guys all for coming. If you have any questions, like always, feel free to shoot me a note. And good luck this week. I hope that it all goes really smoothly, so you can have a good week, spend some time with friends, family, all that fun stuff. So yeah, thanks for coming.